For 2.5 millennia, the galaxy slumbered beneath a manufactured peace, upheld not by trust but by mutual deterrence. The Galactic Council, a bastion of bureaucratic stability, presided over thousands of species with the conviction that order could be eternal if dissent was ignored long enough. Empires rose and fell in slow, sanctioned transitions. Trade thrived, borders froze, and ideology was replaced by apathy. Most saw this as progress. A few, including humanity, saw it as stagnation. Earth, though a council member, remained curiously passive, present yet distant, compliant, but never fully integrated. While other civilizations lobbied, schemed, and forged alliances within council chambers, humanity watched and listened from the sidelines, sending no more than a single representative, rarely engaging in interstellar votes. Speculation about Earth's silence had endured for centuries. Some saw it as wisdom, others as cowardice. The younger species questioned if humans had lost their edge, having once been spoken of in fearful tones when they first discovered FTL. But their warships remained docked, their armies unseen. They signed every treaty and ratified every trade deal, yet never initiated any. Their homeworld became more myth than power, a blue dot surrounded by unbroken silence, enigmatic and unprovoked. Over time, the Council grew comfortable with this stillness. Too comfortable. That comfort shattered in an instant. Without precedent, Earth's representative requested an emergency summit. There was no warning, no lead-up. The signal was brief, the language cold. Every council species, from the ancient Solari to the fire-born Delutak, turned their attention to the human's long-dormant voice. Within minutes, the council chamber's quantum links activated. Faces from dozens of star systems appeared, layered in glowing holographics across the central ring, awaiting Earth's message. For a few seconds, there was only silence. Then a transmission began, not from Earth's delegate, but from Earth itself. A black screen. One line. Asterisk. Humanity declares war. Asterisk. No context. No list of demands. Just a statement delivered in monotone by an AI-generated voice. The silence that followed was louder than the words. Council delegates stared, disoriented. The assumption was that the message must have been corrupted or misinterpreted. War? Declared by humans? Impossible. Nothing had even occurred. No border incident, no economic collapse, no invasion. The Council had known nothing but quiet compliance from Earth for generations. Panic didn't erupt immediately, it crept in slowly, like a virus. The Council convened a secondary emergency meeting behind closed doors. Analysts pored over human communications archives, recent fleet movements. Everything came back clean. Earth had launched no ships, made no threats, initiated no skirmishes. And yet the declaration was undeniably authentic. Certified by Earth's own diplomatic codes, layered with encryption only their oldest treaty partners recognized. A few members dismissed it as symbolic protest, some performative gesture or internal political maneuver by Earth's government. But others, the older species who remembered what the humans had once been, went quiet. They recalled when humanity first appeared in the galactic scene, how quickly they learned, how fiercely they fought when cornered, how their neural warfare systems had made 3 empires surrender without a shot. And then, just as fast, how they stopped. How they disappeared behind diplomacy. The question that had never been answered was why. Now, it was being answered, not with explanation, but with intention. Council diplomats scrambled to open communication with Earth. None were returned. Embassies reported that their human liaisons had gone dark. Trade routes leading to Sol were locked by a quantum firewall. Surveillance probes vanished as they approached the Oort line. It wasn't posturing. It wasn't saber-rattling. It was a declaration. And the galaxy hadn't been ready. Debates gave way to fear. Rumors began to spread. Had Earth uncovered a new weapon? Had they allied with the rogue border civilizations? Was this a message not to the Council, but to the galaxy at large? But amidst the confusion, one truth became unavoidable. Humanity had made a choice. Not driven by hunger, not by conquest, but something else. Something quiet. something long buried, and now awakened. As systems across the Council began to question, prepare, or panic, one reality stood unchanged: the longest era of peace in galactic history had ended. And humanity had broken it, not with fleets, not with fire, but with a single sentence. The second message arrived precisely 24 hours after the first. This time, it wasn't a sentence, it was evidence. Cold, systematic, undeniable. Humanity had compiled footage, intercepted transmissions, biometric logs, and Council-classified documents. The galaxy watched as the data unfolded like a prosecution. It began with the disappearance of the Icarus Horizon, a deep space human research vessel reported missing near the Tyros Belt. Official Council reports labeled it an accident, a navigational error resulting in a black hole event. Humanity's files proved otherwise. Encrypted surveillance showed Council warships disabling the vessel's propulsion and targeting escape pods. Thermal signatures indicated boarding parties. Medical scans revealed biological experimentation on survivors. There were no negotiations, no prisoners returned. The ship's wreckage had been harvested, scrubbed, and erased from official records. Every word of the cover-up was now exposed, traced directly to senior Council officials. It wasn't a rogue attack. It was sanctioned. That revelation would have been enough for war, but the files didn't stop. Humanity had tracked decades of abuses hidden by bureaucracy. Outer colony raids dismissed as pirate attacks were actually precision strikes by allied species seeking new resource veins. Civilian habitats had been targeted, their populations quietly relocated, or terminated. Requests for investigations had been stalled, rerouted, buried in subcommittees until the evidence decayed. Earth had submitted over 80 formal complaints. Not one was ever acknowledged. Then came the audio logs. A Council communications channel captured a private exchange between two senior species. They spoke candidly of Earth's passivity as a tool, referring to humans as domesticated predators, no longer capable of retaliation. One remarked that if another ship was lost, Earth would send another. Because humans prefer bleeding to biting. That assumption, now broadcast to billions, proved fatal. The final file wasn't visual. It was a document, Council Directive 748C, marked top secret. Dated 30 years prior, it authorized strategic manipulation of human expansion to reduce long-term influence. Signed by over a dozen Council members. The plan had mapped Earth's potential growth and deliberately constrained it through controlled resource allocation, misinformation, and proxy conflicts disguised as border disputes. Humanity had known. They hadn't acted, until now. Once the transmission ended, no defense was issued. There was nothing to refute. Everything bore Council encryption. The data came from internal servers, not external accusations. Earth hadn't just declared war, it had convicted the Council in the court of public opinion across thousands of worlds. Protests erupted on Council-aligned planets. Neutral species demanded explanation. Former allies distanced themselves. No threats were issued, but the implication was clear: Earth had tolerated betrayal. Now, tolerance had ended. The Council scrambled to regain control. Official statements cited miscommunication, rogue actors, misunderstood protocols. But the galaxy had seen enough. The myth of Council impartiality shattered. For centuries, the galaxy had believed peace endured because the Council safeguarded balance. Humanity exposed that belief as fiction. Peace existed only because no one had tested it. Until Earth did. More than retaliation, the message revealed motive. Humanity hadn't lashed out impulsively, they had endured, recorded, compiled, and waited. Every atrocity had been logged, every injustice traced, every betrayal catalogued. They hadn't retaliated because they hadn't needed to. Not yet. When they moved, it was with complete understanding of the system's weaknesses: legal, political, military. They hadn't just exposed corruption. They had planned its fall. The final act of the message wasn't military. It was philosophical. An AI voice delivered the closing words. Peace without justice is submission. Order without accountability is tyranny. You broke both. We answer accordingly. That statement wasn't broadcast through diplomatic channels. It was inserted into every standard transmission relay across Council space. Embedded in trade frequencies, media loops, emergency protocols. Everyone, everywhere heard it. Simultaneously. The Council hadn't just lost trust, it lost control. Humanity's declaration wasn't merely vengeance. It was clarity. They had given the Council time, opportunities, proof. But nothing had changed. The only language left was action. Earth spoke it fluently. The war did not begin with fleets crossing borders. It began with systems failing. Communication relays stopped responding. Trade convoys vanished mid-route. Council military outposts lost synchronization with their own drones. At first, it was dismissed as a technical malfunction, maybe sabotage from fringe elements. But as entire sectors went dark in unison, it became evident this was deliberate, controlled, and precisely coordinated. Humanity hadn't struck in anger. They had executed a strategy built in silence. For centuries, Earth had appeared disengaged, investing little in visible fleet expansion or border skirmishes. What the Council never grasped was that humanity had shifted its focus beyond what could be monitored. Artificial intelligence governed every level of human infrastructure, not just as tools but as sovereign systems. These AI were not limited by bureaucratic restraint or layered oversight. They operated independently, evolving quietly, building networks far beyond the reach of standard detection protocols. By the time the Council realized it, they were already inside. Human probes, cloaked by gravitational distortion and quantum mirroring, had mapped every major installation across Council territory. Human satellites hidden in asteroid belts had monitored military traffic patterns for decades. Their warships were fewer but never idle. Each was a command nexus capable of commanding full system assaults through AI-driven automation. Human fleets weren't large. They didn't need to be. Each vessel could control entire squadrons of drones, disrupt enemy targeting, and disable communications in real time. Their weapons were not designed for spectacle. They were surgical. Kinetic strikes delivered at relativistic speeds bypassed shields not with power, but with timing. Nanite munitions, previously banned, appeared in limited and legal civilian use, until activated. One cargo shipment to a Council weapons depot had carried the payload that rendered its internal systems inert. Entire fleets lost power before they could lock on a single target. Human tactics weren't reactive. They were predictive. Terraforming ships were repurposed for orbital denial. Civilian research platforms, long considered harmless, had been modified to manipulate planetary magnetospheres. Council fleets approaching affected zones found their sensors scrambled, targeting arrays looping false data, and internal systems triggering false alarms. In one instance, a flagship turned its weapons inward, convinced it was under attack. No human ship had even entered the sector. The turning point came when human AI deployed precision disruption arrays. These non-lethal weapons targeted neural synchronization patterns unique to Council command species. Entire crews, trained on harmonized brainwave frequencies, were rendered unconscious or disoriented. There was no bloodshed, only immediate collapse. Human systems then entered, extracted critical data, and left before detection recovered. It wasn't conquest. It was dismantling. Earth didn't need to occupy territory. Their goal wasn't planetary control, it was systemic unraveling. They understood that dominance wasn't measured in territory but in initiative. While the Council scrambled to understand the scale, humanity remained one move ahead, not because of superior numbers, but because of strategic patience. The long silence had been mistaken for retreat. It was observation. What unsettled the Council most was the realization that none of this had been reactive. There was no scramble, no improvisation. Every countermeasure, every disruption, had been tested in simulations, refined across generations. Earth had not only expected betrayal, they had prepared to respond without emotion. Each act was executed with cold precision. Not for revenge. For closure. Even more disturbing was the absence of propaganda. Humanity didn't broadcast victories, didn't claim triumphs. They offered no justification beyond the original message. Their fleets didn't remain in captured zones. No new banners were raised. Territories were left intact, untouched except for disabled infrastructure and silent satellites left behind. The message was clear: they were not seeking rule. They were issuing correction. And behind it all, human civilian life remained untouched. No mobilization orders. No calls for sacrifice. Their society had been designed to function during conflict without altering daily life. That stability unnerved their enemies more than any weapon. Earth wasn't disrupted by war. It had integrated it into its design. The collapse did not begin with destruction. It began with silence. Council sectors, once alive with diplomatic chatter and military orders, turned into corridors of unanswered signals. Command structures fractured under pressure they had never prepared for. Entire fleets stopped responding, not due to combat, but because the systems they depended on were now ghosted by human interference. Central leadership attempted to assert control, but loyalty wavered. The illusion of stability unraveled faster than any defense plan could compensate for. Member species no longer trusted one another. Accusations spread through internal networks, some claiming betrayal, others demanding withdrawal. Factions splintered. In the absence of human engagement, paranoia grew. Treaties were reinterpreted. Defense pacts dissolved. Several planets declared neutrality, not out of strategy, but survival instinct. Entire systems turned off long-range beacons, hoping to appear invisible, unnoticed. They weren't targets, yet no one wanted to test Earth's threshold again. Within Council headquarters, chaos replaced protocol. Delegates demanded answers, but none came. The Chairworld's AI support systems began crashing from overuse and invasive signal bleed, believed to be residual effects from human relay tampering. With communications compromised, decision-making shifted from collective to local. Species leaders withdrew their ambassadors. High-ranking officials vanished. Some fled to outer colonies, others defected entirely, offering encrypted access codes to Earth's command as bargaining chips. Humanity responded not with acceptance, but silence. No terms. No acknowledgement. No reward. Council traders found themselves ignored, left to drift with the knowledge that Earth neither wanted their service nor trusted their desperation. The message remained consistent: this war was not conquest. It was consequence. The unraveling accelerated when a group of mid-tier Council species attempted to organize resistance. Their fleets were intercepted before formation could complete. Not by overwhelming force, but by interruption. Command ships never launched. Fuel supplies were drained remotely. Docking clamps refused to disengage. Data suggested that human infiltration had begun years earlier, embedding fail-safe logic into systems never suspected of vulnerability. Even internal sabotage could not be ruled out. Confidence collapsed before the first launch order was issued. On several core worlds, riots broke out, not in defiance of Earth, but against Council leadership. Populations that had once feared humanity now viewed it with grim clarity. They saw precision instead of cruelty, restraint instead of destruction. In contrast, the Council appeared reckless, blind, and unprepared. Protesters held signs bearing translated human transmissions. Some began wearing symbolic emblems based on Earth's old exploratory fleet logos, appropriated as symbols of order. Council-controlled media failed to shift opinion. Their narratives of unjust aggression rang hollow when weighed against the data Earth had released. Leaked files showed systematic exploitation, not isolated incidents. The people believed what they saw: governments had betrayed them, and Earth had exposed it. Eventually, demands turned inward. Civilians called for the arrest of officials named in human documents. On the planet Vereen, 3 governors were publicly executed by their own security forces. Elsewhere, military units refused orders, instead broadcasting calls for investigation. The Council had not been defeated in battle. It was being consumed by its own exposed structure. Humanity never occupied these worlds. There were no ground campaigns, No forced regime changes. Earth had no need. Power shifted naturally, driven by a vacuum. What they did remove were the instruments of silence. Surveillance grids collapsed. Censorship systems were overwritten by autonomous human subroutines. Populations regained access to communications filtered for generations. History rewritten by the Council began to correct itself. Species long believed to be aggressors were revealed as victims. Narratives dissolved. Truth flooded. A formal surrender never arrived. Instead, Council systems simply stopped functioning. Ships refused to launch. Armories were found disabled, safeties locked by encrypted pulses that couldn't be reversed. Council leaders sent messages pleading for negotiation, but none were answered. Instead, Earth transmitted a final directive. Surrender is not needed. Compliance is irrelevant. Your authority has ended. With no regime left to challenge, no resistance able to form, the war concluded not with a final strike, but with the realization that no one could remember when the Council last gave orders that mattered. In the aftermath, no parades followed, no human banners were raised on foreign worlds. There were no broadcasts of victory, no calls for celebration. Earth remained silent, its fleets vanishing from view as quickly as they had appeared. Systems once tied to the Council began recalibrating on their own. Without fanfare, governance structures realigned under local authority. Where collapse was expected, order began to emerge, not through control, but through example. Humanity made no territorial claims. Instead, they issued one document, a multi-species charter transmitted through every available frequency. It contained no threats, no ultimatums, only structure. It proposed rotating leadership, public transparency, absolute data access across member civilizations, and an automated justice framework operated by synthetic arbitration AIs programmed with immutable ethical baselines. No species would dominate. No voice would be silenced. The old hierarchy was not reformed. It was replaced. Galactic response was swift. Systems long marginalized found themselves prioritized under this new order. Former allies of the Council, initially skeptical, recognized the absence of manipulation or coercion. Humanity required no tribute, demanded no reconstruction funds, and positioned no garrisons. They offered tools, secure codebases, decentralized communication platforms, public historical archives untainted by revisionism. Every species had equal access. Participation was voluntary. Most accepted. On worlds still recovering, human assistance came quietly. Engineering drones rebuilt collapsed power grids, restored water systems, eliminated synthetic waste left behind by decades of neglect. No instructions accompanied them. They completed tasks and left, their actions self-executed under humanitarian programming developed generations ago. People noticed. For the first time in living memory, aid arrived without agenda. Education changed first. Human historical records, long withheld from the Council archives, became public. Species once fed propaganda discovered shared experiences. Stories of resistance, of survival, mirrored across worlds that had never spoken to each other directly. Networks of understanding formed without diplomacy. Cultural isolation dissolved. Younger generations adopted human practices, not out of reverence, but logic. Transparency was not an ideal. It had proven functional. Attempts to resurrect the old order failed. Those who pushed for centralized control found themselves sidelined. The new systems required consensus through decentralized protocols, outvotes, and override safeguards impossible to manipulate. Corruption became detectable by default. Influence lost its value. Power, in the traditional sense, became irrelevant. Throughout it all, Earth remained distant. Its population resumed ordinary life. No military expansion followed. Defense platforms stayed online, but dormant. Human AIs issued updates only when necessary, often correcting minor violations of the new charter before they escalated. Their intervention was never violent. A single warning was enough. Former council members, stripped of authority, were not imprisoned. They were exiled into anonymity. Earth permitted no revenge. Accountability had been delivered, not through punishment, but exposure. What broke the council was not destruction. It was daylight. The fear they had projected for centuries had proven self-inflicted. Some civilizations began erecting monuments, not to humanity, but to clarity. Obelisks of data, engraved with every document released by Earth, stood in central squares. They weren't symbols of war. They were records of what had once been hidden. Generations would learn from them. Not who to fear, but how to recognize silence as complicity. In the years that followed, Earth withdrew again. No expansion. No political seats. Their message was final: peace required no rulers, only memory. They left behind systems built not to control, but to resist control. The galaxy, once balanced by intimidation, now functioned through distributed vigilance. When questions arose about Earth's future role, no statements were made. No representatives appeared. Yet, across space, species lived without fear of vanishing colonies, silenced protests, or buried crimes. They didn't thank Earth. They couldn't. Humanity had not come for gratitude. They had come to end a lie. And once it was done, they stepped back, leaving behind not an empire, but a mirror no civilization could avoid.